The NUS Distinguished Speaker Series brings compelling speakers to share their unique perspectives on pressing issues of the future that affect our country, our region, and the world. The series explores the overarching theme of shaping the future and encourages thought-provoking ideas and conversations that inspire debate and discussion. This afternoon, we are privileged to have with us Dr. Margaret Chan, Founding Dean, Vanke School of Public Health and Vanke Chair Professor, Tsinghua University, and Emeritus Director General, World Health Organization. In this session, Dr. Chan will share her insights on opportunities in public health to build a healthier, fairer, inclusive, and sustainable world. Moderating the Q&A session with Dr. Chan will be Professor Ying, Dean of the NUS Hock School of Public Health. It is now my pleasure to invite NUS President Professor Tan Eng Chai to begin by saying a few words. Prof. Tan, please.
Thank you, Sarah. Founding Dean, Vanke School of Public Health and Vanke Chair Professor, Tsinghua University, and Emeritus Director General, World Health Organization, Dr. Margaret Chan, NUS Chairman, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. The COVID experience of the last 3 years should leave none of us with any doubt about the critical importance of public health. Collectively, the world experienced the traumatic impact a global pandemic can have on our societies, our livelihoods, and our different and diverse ways of life. Terms like lockdown and Zooming became part of our everyday discourse. During the pandemic, the world also watched in admiration as healthcare workers suddenly thrust into the front lines, fought courageously and with great dedication to save lives and also care for those afflicted with COVID. Overall, Singapore managed the pandemic in the disciplined and cohesive fashion. The government took measured and firm steps as the pandemic evolved and as our understanding increased. The people rallied and supported the difficult measures needed to battle the disease. But this was not uniformly the experience across the world. In some societies, the economic disruption caused by COVID brought long simmering tensions into the open. In others, inadequate resources and unequal access to healthcare raised sharp and uncomfortable questions about inequality and class and gender disparities. The world needs to collectively learn from our COVID experience if we are to emerge stronger, more unified, and more resilient when the next public health challenge emerges, whatever shape it takes. We are therefore privileged that Dr. Margaret Chan, the inaugural Dean of Vanke School of Public Health, Tsinghua University in China, as well as Emeritus Director General of the World Health Organization, will be addressing us today in this edition of the NUS Distinguished Speaker Series. Yesterday, at commencement, NUS is proud to confer upon Dr. Chan the honorary degree of Doctor of Science. The degree was actually awarded in 2021, but due to COVID travel restrictions, she was only able to travel to Singapore to receive the award in person this year. Dr. Chan is a prominent leader in the promotion of global health in 1994, Dr. Chan was appointed Director of Health of Hong Kong, the first woman to hold that position. During her 9-year tenure, she spearheaded many new initiatives, such as improving communicable disease surveillance and response, enhancing training for public health professionals, and strengthening local and international collaborations. She also played a leading role in combating H5N1, avian influenza, and SARS when these diseases first emerged. She just told us earlier, she spent 65 days handling the media. That's quite a record. Dr. Chan proved a trailblazer again in 2006 when she became the first Chinese person to lead a United Nations agency when she was elected Director General of WHO. Now, as Director General, she once again led the fight against diseases such as Ebola and Zika. She also became a leading advocate in promoting universal healthcare and prioritizing women's health. Dr. Chan's lecture today will be on shaping the future of global public health with reference to the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and, of course, its list of 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. Now, amongst these goals are good health and well-being. But there is widespread recognition that many complex challenges stand in the way of a high standard of global health coverage, such economic and social inequalities, rapid urbanization, and the continuing challenges of infectious and non-communicable diseases. Dr. Chan's lecture will no doubt prove enlightening in how we can tackle these challenges and seek out opportunities to raise our healthcare delivery to deliver stronger, more positive outcomes for communities across the world. For NUS, we have for some time adopted an integrated healthcare framework that synergizes across our research, education, and innovation endeavors. For example, our aging research cluster focuses on developing interventions and technologies to promote healthy and active aging. While in our biomedical science and translational medicine cluster, we are intensifying translational research to develop new drugs, diagnostics, and devices for the prevention and treatment of diseases. High-quality public healthcare is a complex and challenging endeavor. New technologies and innovation will open up exciting new opportunities, even as global health challenges and conditions continue to evolve. Collaboration, partnership, and a deep sensitivity to local contexts are key tools to ensure our collective ability to deliver sustainable and resilient healthcare systems that not only improve lives, but strengthen social unity. So on this note, it is my privilege and honor to invite Dr. Margaret Chan to deliver her address. Dr. Margaret Chan.
Thank you, Prof. Tan. We are now pleased to hear from our speaker, Dr. Margaret Chan.
Thank you.
Dr. Chan, please.
Thank you. Just in case for those who didn't hear us, I said to NUS President, Professor Tan, I said, I agree with everything you said. So the second sentence, I said, can I go home now? Well, friends, Professor Tan, Dean YY, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good day to all of you. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to come back to Hock School of Public Health today in NUS and speak on shaping the future of global health or global public health. To me, global health and public health means the same thing. My focus is based on my experience working in the World Health Organization for almost 15 years. After my presentation, I'm happy to take questions and answers with the guidance of Dean YY2. As you know, we begin. Let us say that I mentioned to Prof. Tan that I spent 65 days with the media during SARS. So we built a trusting relationship, a long-term relationship. So I hope this will continue in this environment as well. It's not easy to talk to the media for 65 days. They are smart. They ask difficult questions, right? But when you don't have the answer, you have to say, I don't know. That's easier for a woman to say than for a man. That's my little experience. So let me start with a couple of definitions that I Googled on global health for our discussion today. The first one is, and in quotations, global health is the health of populations in the global context. ... It places a priority on improving health and achieving equity in health for all people worldwide. The second definition, global health is about worldwide health improvement, reduction of disparities, and the protection against health threats that disregard national borders. That fits the current pandemic very well, doesn't it? People would agree that the global health architecture is indeed overcrowded. And I met a friend from the UNICEF, an old friend in Singapore here. He used to remind me, we met. To be frank with you, I can't remember. That was so long ago. But anyways, it is true that the global architecture is overcrowded. And knowing the movers and shakers in global health is very useful in navigating in any overcrowded environment. As former Director General of WHO, I have to say, the global health architecture with WHO, the World Health Organization, at its core is indeed very crowded. The architecture comprises of countries. In WHO alone, we have 193 countries from around the world. And we also work with NGOs, the private sector, other UN organizations, aid agency, academia, scientists, foundations, and philanthropic organizations. You get a earful, don't you? WHO's engagement with what we call non-state actor. You need to understand this. WHO as an organization is a government organization. But nowadays, in global health, you need to engage with all the other actors that I have discussed just now. So, in order to improve transparency, in May 2016, WHO's engagement with the non-state actor was fully adopted as a resolution. At that time, I was still the Director General of WHO. I'm telling you, that was quite a task. You think it is difficult to work with countries? Please try NGOs. NGOs change the following day. They have this ability to change. Talk about industry. So, industry interference. The classic example is tobacco. Now we are beginning to talk about alcohol, and so on and so forth. But I'm not here to say that you don't work with them. Well, except with tobacco. As a Director General of WHO, there's no place for tobacco. What about alcohol? It's difficult, isn't it? If you are French, if you are certain countries in Asia, my advice to them is moderation is important. Do whatever good to your people based on science and based on evidence. Now, I mentioned many structures just now, and these structures form themselves into partnerships. Well, for every specific health area, there are numerous partnerships. Some famous ones like the Global Fund for AIDS, TB, and malaria. Gavi is for vaccines. Every woman, every child is for maternal, newborn, and child health, and so on and so forth. Partnership can be bilateral or multilateral. It can be formal or informal, big or small, within, some with and some without a board to manage its business. So partnership is complex. Can you imagine? With the proliferation of global health partnership of all sizes and all kinds, this is the global architecture for all of us. Can you wrap your hands around this? I cannot. I cannot. It was a challenge. Now, some people ask me, are global health partnerships okay? All I can tell you is that I have heard, as former DG of WHO, both positive comments and criticism about global health partnerships. Partnerships, well, donors, I call them donors and recipient countries. Donor countries like transparency in decision-making and in funding. And of course, they want results that are deliverable and measurable. It's not rocket science, isn't it? Now, what are some of the criticisms that I had heard? High transaction costs, heavy reporting duties, distortion of national priorities, industry interference, competition, particularly the mandate creep of the UN organizations. That I will stay silent. It is not easy to navigate in such a complex and overcrowded environment, especially for countries that have very little capacity. Mostly they are in developing world. What about the major public health issues or global health issues? You will hear many concerns, and some concerns are event-specific, some are, like disease burden-specific, and others are location-specific, or people say country-specific. So what does that mean? It means, as an organization, the World Health Organization has to embrace everything the 195 countries consider important. So this is a big challenge. Now, in mid-2023, we are at the tail end of an unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic. The public health emergency of international concern, was announced by the World Health Organization as over. But the virus is still going around, mutating and causing infections in some people. Thank goodness, the severity in around the world is very mild. Countries are concerned about long COVID now. Well, many of you have been infected, right? Some of you may have long COVID. For the lucky ones, you don't. But our mental health has been affected. 3 years. I don't know about Singapore. Either you are in lockdown or whatever, right? Human being is born to be associating with people. We don't like lockdown, okay? 3 years of lockdown, we really need to rethink what the health system can do now. And of course, we are hearing people talking about disease surveillance is important, pandemic preparedness is important, and response. And Bill Gates came out with a new book, isn't it? To prevent the next pandemic. I think that's a good move. Of course, if you talk to other countries, they were hurt very severely by what I call vaccine nationalism. And we are hearing many countries in the developing world aspiring to have local capacity to avoid similar occurrence. So this is a judgment, whether or not you invest in that, whether you have the capacity to do that. Only time will tell. Now, concerns about the world's population. The world's population is growing bigger, and the latest count was 8 billion people, and it's counting. However, the world's people is generally more urban, dense, sicker, and older. I'm 76. Oh, did I count correctly? I look young, but I'm not. So, putting aging and dementia on the list of major health challenges. But you must understand one thing. The distribution is uneven, okay? Countries in this region, like China and Singapore, are well below the replacement level of 2. But it has created different set of conditions and problems for Singapore and for China. So it's not a cookie-cutter approach. What applies to Singapore does not apply to China and vice versa. And this is adding to the complexity of the architecture. Okay? We call it country specificity. Now, if you look at the recent forest fire in Canada, some countries are very worried about air pollution, environmental degradation, lack of water and sanitation, climate change, and its impact on communicable diseases, food and agriculture. Can you imagine the USA, of all countries, recently reported malaria cases? It's unheard of. So what does climate change do to us? So we have to think deep. And of course, neglected communicable diseases are overtaken communicable diseases and are becoming the biggest killers worldwide. Heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and cancers are on the rise. And we notice one thing, they are rising in younger age group. So this is something we need to be concerned about. Because the young people, we need you. We need your employability. What if you come down with, NCDs? So be careful. These diseases we consider too expensive to treat for any individual, for the family, and for the country. And of course, everybody is talking about prevention, including primary, secondary, and tertiary. It is easier said than done. Why did I say that? For ladies, I'm a lady, I'm a woman, okay? It's easier to take a pill to cause slimming, isn't it? I want to lose weight. It is easier to take a pill than to do regular exercise. And this is reality. It's driven by personal behavior. Nothing wrong with it. Now, the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals, has stalled and all reversed during the pandemic. And many more people are suffering inequalities, and they are slipping back into poverty. The traditional unfinished health issues like maternal, newborn, and child health, childhood vaccination, malnutrition, and sexually transmitted diseases are all affected. In summary, there are many global health issues, but growing inequalities in global health becomes the trend that will last for at least the next 10 years. Growing inequalities. So, colleagues, we are living in a very complex world. The challenges in global health are not new, except we are seeing a rise in recent years in geopolitics, discrimination, mistrust, conflicts, food and energy insecurity, inflation, slow economic recovery, climate change, and its impact on agriculture and food supply. I'm telling you nothing you don't know, okay? And this is simple facts. Given these trends, the years ahead will be very tough for global health, for many countries, and for many partnerships. We expect to see austerity measures like budget cuts, stoppage of health projects, less philanthropy, and aid money from the rich countries to help the poor countries. And we hope that the global architecture may rationalize. I don't know. But one thing for sure, strategic partnerships will survive with less funding. And we should expect more health crises due to conflicts, due to migrations, lack of food, energy insecurity, and the challenge of climate change. But the impact of these crises is different in different countries. Hence, the future of global health seems less bright. But colleagues, let me remind you, history has shown us that we must keep our hope up. We must take our responsibilities and work even harder in difficult times. Anti-cyclical investment in AI, in digital technology to improve logistics and to cut costs, investment in green development to address energy insecurity, and investment in agriculture and food technology to counter the negative impact of climate change. In short, positive attitude and human ingenuity works wonders in times of adversity. A good place to start. For me, I'm also human. I get frustrated too. But we need to reimagine. We need to innovate the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. If you look at the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, I would say it's transformative. The decision was historic, comprehensive, far-reaching, people-centered. It is actually a plan for the people, for the planet, and for prosperity. It also seeks to strengthen universal peace, to free all the poor people from the human race from poverty, and to heal and secure our planet. Countries must redouble their efforts and invest in ending poverty and hunger. Invest in the education of children, women, and girls. Invest in innovation and technology capacity. Invest in building a just, equitable, and inclusive world. And I want to congratulate Singapore. Professor Tan has, briefly mentioned the direction, and I think you are on a good trajectory. We are here to talk about global health. This is what global health is all about. It is about improving the health of people in the global context and achieving equity in health for all people worldwide. So, colleagues, to build a healthier, fairer, inclusive, and sustainable world, I ask you to keep in mind some overarching opportunities in global health. The first one, better global health governance. Strengthening it takes courage from the member states of WHO. The current pandemic has exposed the deficiency of global health governance with WHO at its core. But don't forget all the other entities that I talk about. We are all in this together. The WHO consists of primarily member countries, 193 of them, who are shareholders of the organization. And of course, it also includes the Secretariat. The reform of WHO is needed. Member countries of the organization have been reminded and encouraged more than 10 years ago. I remember that distinctly because I said so when I was Director General. I did say to all my member states to say that they behave more like, I wish they would behave more like shareholders than visitors to Geneva, beautiful Geneva. If you want the organization to be successful, in performing its constitutional mandate. And let me quote, to act as the directing and coordinating authority on international health work. Member countries must cooperate and have the courage and resolve to reform the organization internally and externally, to provide it with the authority, the flexibility, and greater resources in keeping with its mandate, and at the same time, to hold the organization to account. WHO is an UN agency for technical cooperation in health. In peacetime, it is coordinating all the stakeholders and all the partnerships in global health assistance to facilitate capacity building in developing countries. When countries and stakeholders cooperate, we have seen successes. Let me name a few. And everybody quote smallpox eradication. That was a long time ago. More current, we talk about strengthening the health system with universal health coverage. In addressing the market failure through donations in neglected tropical diseases, in the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, in cutting child mortality by half, in reducing stunting of children, in malnutrition, and of course, in reducing HIV/AIDS, TB, and malaria. Overall, the health of people have improved. During an international crisis, like a pandemic, WHO has to act as the directing and coordinating authority to protect health security. For me, as a retired person, it is painful to watch COVID-19, the longest health crisis in centuries. Global cooperation is seriously affected during the pandemic, but the virus does not disappear. It is exploiting the division and the mistrust among some countries and causing havoc in the world in many fronts. I sincerely hope that the member countries of the World Health Organization have learned the hard lessons and take action to improve global health governance to prevent similar occurrence in future pandemics. The second thing I ask you to pay attention to, take the opportunities, is country leadership. You must take the responsibility to protect the health and well-being of all people. Now, let's start at the country level. Every Minister of Health in every country has dual responsibilities in protecting the health and well-being of its own people and that of the world. So for many of you, you have heard act locally, but cooperate globally with people at heart, humanity at heart. So that is the logo for Wenke. The acronym for Wenke School. I've been promoting every country's Minister of Health has dual responsibilities. Country leadership, of course, must build or strengthen the fundamental weakness locally in the health system, in disease surveillance and response, in pandemic preparedness, as well as in achieving health services for all people in your own country. From experience, global health partnerships, the majority of them want to do good. the recipient countries in accepting assistance for capacity building, be it in kind or in cash, you must choose genuine strategic partnerships without compromising on national priorities to protect the interests of your country. Country leadership is willingness to build trust with the local community based on transparency and accountability, based on science and evidence. I've seen this in Singapore. You have the Prime Minister in front of the camera telling Singaporeans what he believes. I think that is admirable. Any misinformation need to be promptly corrected with facts to prevent them from undermining public trust and confidence. Leadership also means sharing of information and working together with other countries, regionally and globally, to tackle common health challenges. The third thing I would ask for you to pay attention to is health equity. Narrowing the gap between the rich and the poor, leaving no one behind in any society, is all about fairness and justice. It is central and transformative commitment of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The current pandemic highlights our collective failure to vaccinate the vulnerable and the poor globally and prolong the pandemic with an unacceptable loss of lives and suffering. Vaccine nationalism, you heard about it, and the empty promises of some rich countries, and the greed of the pharmaceutical companies must be condemned. The unsatisfactory situation of market failure actually is not new. It has been in existence for a long time. But during a crisis, the distributional justice of scarce health resources during the health crisis is much more acute and requires solidarity and global cooperation, as we are in the same boat. It is true, we must give credit to the world, and they have taken some steps like the COVAX and other initiatives like donations of countermeasures like masks, experience, and the vaccines eventually during the pandemic crisis to minimize what I call the distributional injustice. Clearly, the overall result was not enough. For those of you hear the global conversation at the World Health Organization negotiation, you would understand where the criticism from certain countries are coming from. In the long run, actions to increase the manufacturing capacity and stockpiling of countermeasures and vaccines in developing countries must be considered. Action include R&D capacity building, technology transfer, global public goods, and using the TRIPS provisions. Health inequalities and a wide gap between the rich and the poor is neither good for stability nor security in any society. Number 4, last but not the least, nurturing the future generations, the young people. They are the driving forces for change in global health and in sustainable development. For any nation, the greatest wealth and strength is its youth. They are the force to drive basic science, life sciences, and technology innovation, which are the new frontiers in global health, as well as in sustainable development. I strongly believe in creating opportunities for the young people and their participation. Well, for those of you who have been following my activities, you would know that it's a must that in all the global health conferences that I helped to organize since my retirement, youth voices must be heard. So, ladies and gentlemen, we should not underestimate the potential of youth, particularly the Generation Z. They make up 24% of the world population. They grow up with the internet, with the mobile phones. They are very savvy with digital technology and social media. They know how to communicate and to learn about different cultures in different continents. Gender equality, fairness, justice, and diversity are their characteristics. Generation Z are more likely to understand and appreciate different worldview, more receptive to environmental protection, social inclusion, and they are more supportive of climate change, green development, and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Last but not the least, their open attitude and broad horizon is ready to usher in a brighter future for global public health and sustainable development. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Chan. May we invite you as well as Prof. Teo to take your seats on stage for the question and answer session. Please feel free to submit your questions for Dr. Chan via Pigeonhole. You may scan the QR codes on the left and right wall panels of the venue.
Yes, it is on.
Okay.
So I can't help but following from what Dr. Chan has mentioned, that I wanted to highlight the value of a Masters of Public Health training. That is quite important for future leaders, and perhaps every Minister of Health or every Director General of Health ought to do a Masters of Public Health in their respective institutions. But NUS offers a Masters of Public Health. So if you would like to pursue a Master of Public Health, please speak to me or my colleagues who are around. But Dr. Chan, thank you very much for painting a picture of what the future global health would look like. I would start off with a very pessimistic picture, because we had a golden era of multilateralism before COVID arrives. Many countries, including Singapore, thrived on the fact that countries were trading openly, talking openly with each other. So I would consider that era to be an era of golden era of multilateralism. But yet, when COVID-19 happened, it seemed that all that global alliances immediately disappeared. Countries were very quick to look to themselves and actually protect their own people first. So when we think about issues around equity, around partnerships, it is now this belief that in the aftermath of COVID-19, countries are now saying, we cannot rely on multilateral ties anymore, because when a global health emergency strikes, countries' first response is close my borders, protect my own people. As a leader in WHO, what are your thoughts to that?
This is nothing new, isn't it? For those of us in health, whenever a new disease emerges, the first thing some countries will think of is, ooh, I must close my border to make sure that I do not allow them to come in. Well, history tells us that one country who was an island, who shall remain nameless, did the right thing, closed its border. So the pandemic arrived only a few months later. So in other words, WHO's position is very clear. Closing your border doesn't help. So, I don't know, but that's the automatic mode of operation. I'm not condoning it, but, the international health regulation makes sure that you do not unnecessarily stop movement of people. And actually, people carry the viruses. True or not? And the viruses are invisible. How can you distinguish person A from person B? Until such time you have the testing, isn't it? But there is always a lag time. There is always a lag time in science. For those of you, you are agreeing with me, right? Because you have to be responsible for hospital. To admit or not to admit. So, with any new and emerging infection, the world expects too much. And don't forget, there is a degree of uncertainty. Okay?
You mentioned there's a degree of uncertainty, but now I would like to link this pessimistic view to climate change. Because climate actions rely a lot on partnerships and cooperations of global citizens. And I think we at NUS, we are very proud. We have Professor Jason Lee here. He's the director for the NUS Heat Resilience and Performance Center. And they have taken a very active step on behalf of NUS to contribute to climate action. But in light of failing multilateralism, what hope or even what advice would you give to guide the world towards climate?
If you look at the successful Paris Agreement, that is multilateralism. At that time, it was led by the then Director General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, to achieve. But behind the scene, two big countries agreed to cooperate. And that's multilateralism. So that's why we have to think carefully. What does multilateralism mean? Every country has a say, isn't it? I'm sure Singapore, no matter how big or small you are, you want to have your say. So that is multilateralism for you. But unfortunately, we know multilateralism works when countries work, when partnerships work together. But when countries don't work together, as in the case of COVID-19, it will not be successful.
So at this point, I'll just remind all members of the audience that you could scan the QR code that is found on the left or the right-hand side of your seat, and you could submit questions. We have started getting quite a number of questions coming in. One of the questions is really around your statement of context specificity and having to work with 193 member states in the WHO. Surely there will be conflicting priorities, conflicting opinions. As the leader, how do you take into account and manage some of this conflict? Because one of the biggest problems that we have in Singapore, and which we reject strongly, is that the voice is never proportionate to the size or the population of the country.
Well, your question is, as a former Director General, how do you deal with different interests, isn't it? With great difficulty. It's never easy. The positioning of the Director General of WHO is important. I regard as a servant to serve 193 countries. Okay? That's my starting point. I need to provide a platform. We call it platform, but actually means meeting in WHO. We need to provide meeting for them to discuss, to disagree, and finally come to agreement. So sometimes it takes one session, sometimes it takes 3 sessions, sometimes it takes 4 years, and there is one issue I failed miserably. After all the consultations, I still cannot get LGBT among 193 countries agree. So you win some, you lose some. But what is the role of the Director General? As I said, my positioning is very clear. I'm here to serve 193 countries by providing them with a platform to negotiate. So countries, may sound 193, and there are only about 6-7 opinions because WHO has 6 regions. So the 6 regions, there would always be someone to take the lead in each region to do the consultation. So you need to have a dose of patience, isn't it? So sometimes it takes 2 sessions, done. But I have to say I'm very proud because during my time, in the 10 years I served the WHO, I got pretty much the highest number of resolutions agreed. So positioning is important. And listening to voices of the countries is important. It doesn't matter whether you are a small country or you are a big country. In WHO, in multilateralism, is one country, one voice, and one vote.
That's very helpful because it leads very nicely to the next question that we have from the audience. And I'll read it out loud. That during your time as WHO Director General, what were the 3 things that kept you awake at night?
They are all, actually one thing, all new and emerging infections. Because of the pandemic potential, because it can affect every country. So that is the one subject that would keep me awake at night. Sorry, I'm not holding my mic properly. Thank you. So let me repeat. What kept me awake at night? 3 in 1, and that is new and emergent infection. Because of its pandemic potential, because it affects the poor and the rich country. Well, maybe it's equity too.
When you say pandemic, there's always this fear around man-made pandemic, because interestingly, we have a question that is around man-made pandemics, because it reads specifically, are we as a species prepared for the advent or the arrival of man-made pandemics? Because if COVID-19 was a dress rehearsal, we are almost certainly unprepared for the catastrophe that could have been wrought by engineered pathogens. So, what are your views to man-made pandemics?
I pray that there is no such thing as man-made pandemic. I pray. If COVID-19 is a dress rehearsal, certainly I agree with your view that the world is not ready. This is not the first pandemic that WHO, Bill Gates, and many other organizations has warned us in advance. But it fall on deaf ears. So, some colleagues in the World Bank used to describe this fear and neglect cycle. We are still talking about COVID-19, but mind you, many countries have moved on already. They're talking about economic recovery. I hope this time countries do not go through this fear and neglect cycle again. So, as a former Director General, that's correct. The one thing that kept me awake at night is pandemic.
You talk about pandemics keeping you awake at night, but I also hear from all the things you've said, and I'll try and summarize some of the things you said. You mentioned fear. You mentioned having to work with the industry, managing the opinions and views, or sometimes even criticisms of the member states. So it does sound like yourself, your assistant DGs, or even the staff of WHO would be under quite a lot of criticism, pressure, or even stress. Now, one of the things that NUS have been doing quite a lot in the past 3 years is really looking at the mental health and well-being of our people within NUS. But I think it would be also interesting to hear and to learn from what WHO do under your leadership, or right now even under Dr. Tedros' leadership, of what WHO does to care and look after the mental well-being of its people.
Well, I will not answer for Dr. Tedros, the current Director General of WHO. I let him answer that question. But for me, as a former Director General, mental health is one subject that many countries, communities do not talk about. They don't want to face the music. But as a former Director General, I tell you, mental health was one important area that I push. Because you need to get it out of the closet. You need to go through the process of acceptance before you find solutions to address this mental health. So, like HIV/AIDS, for those of you who are young people, you still don't remember at that very early stage, countries are in similar mode. They don't talk about it. They are hiding behind, isn't it? People talk about non-communicable disease, right? Wow. You know what? We call it 富贵病. Non-communicable diseases are the diseases of the wealthy class. Come on. There is no class when it comes to diseases. So try your very best to avoid it.
But I think I will follow up on this issue because when it comes to mental well-being, it is even more contextualized than many other diseases in terms of whether how you detect, how you manage, or even how you prevent. Because in Eastern societies versus Western society, in different age groups, for my kids, for my parents, the stressor will all be different. So how would you advise a society or even the leadership of an organization to look into addressing mental health and well-being in the country, in an institution, or even to me as a parent and a son in a family?
I have one son and one grandson. I think I can speak just by my observation. My grandson is only 4 years old. You don't give him pressure. Children are born to play. He is so happy when he's playing. So let it be. Then when I look at my son, the society is putting a lot of pressure on him. You have to match up with the Joneses. Don't laugh. Okay, I know this. And you have to be work-life balance. It's all talk, isn't it? So what I'm saying, well, depends on whether you're the employer or the employee. Finding the right balance is easier said than done. But in every company, in every organization, you need to be human. Be human. Listen to voices. Okay? Bite your tongue. Don't speak too fast. Okay? Listen first. After listening, whoever comes to complain or comes to articulate their wish, 50% of that tension is off. Listen. But do we have time? I have to learn either. Thinking that I'm the mother and I'm the grandmother? No. Being the grandmother, am I allowed to say something? Well, I'll say it anyways. I have one son. Please ask yourself, do you want to keep your son and to keep your daughter-in-law? So I learned to be a very smart lai. Okay? So that's when I say there are things that you need to understand your position. Raising my son is my responsibility. Raising my grandson is my son and daughter-in-law's responsibility. Why am I messing around? No, we are very happy. So, again, it goes back to your positioning. What you can do, what you cannot do. In certain position, in every position, there are things you do and there are things you keep quiet. And just observe. I hope I'm saying this to, well, you are all too young to be the grandma, to be the lai lai. No, that is truly advice for the younger generation. Beware of your position.
But the message I took away is always find ways to have fun. And
Yes.
I have the president of the university, the board chairman, and the provost here. Please, we should remember how to make NUS fun. But earlier on, you also mentioned one thing. You said, be human. And I want to use that opportunity to raise this question that was shared. I suspect I know who this colleague is. Because the question that was posed is around digital health, artificial intelligence becoming more prevalent. And in a way, this seems to be how modern lifestyle is pivoting towards, that we are now much more reliant on digital technology. Even the way that we communicate, we are texting rather than just giving each other a call.
And holding on to your mobile phone.
And that is something my father will always remind my grandchildren, his grandchildren, my children. I'm not a grandfather. That my father will always tell his grandchildren, give me a call. I will appreciate that much more than a text. But it's not just about personal communication, personal relationship, but even in health, we are starting to see a lot of pivoting towards digital health techniques. And from countries' perspective, they think that it is going to help alleviate manpower concerns, to make things more efficient. But what are your views to that? Are there opportunities and yet at the same time some downside of making it more impersonal?
The simple question is yes and no. The simple answer. Depends. If you are using AI in a factory, of course you save manpower, isn't it? But in health, doctors, in hospital, you need more people, isn't it? With, AI, with, whatnot, my goodness, touch wood. I hate to get into hospital now. With all this technology, well, technology comes with a price, isn't it? Then you have, something to monitor your blood pressure. You have something to monitor your, breathing. My goodness. And you cannot expect one person to be able to do everything. For me, digitalization is a given, isn't it? But I don't mind to tell you, my mobile phone is only used for minimal function. I don't know how to play game. Okay? So it is actually discriminating against elderly. True or not? So you have a mobile phone and I have a mobile phone. My mobile phone can only do 3 things. I use it for email. I use it for WeChat when I'm going to China, and WhatsApp. That's all. But people keep telling me there's a lot of functions. You can use it. Well, my goodness. Each time is so difficult to learn. I gave up. Now, it's a choice again. It's my choice. Isn't it? So you cannot blame the country, the government, or your university. Don't take it.
You're supposed to help me make this place fun.
Well, one thing I can say, the university is doing extremely well, okay? And School of Public Health, I don't know about others' discipline. The School of Public Health is doing extremely well in this COVID-19 because I'm not in first line, right? I'm able to observe and see the value added. So
I assure you, I did not ask her to say that. But thank you very much, Dr. Chan, for saying that. And actually, because you mentioned NUS, and let's shift a little bit to a lighter topic.
Okay.
Because there have also been questions that would like to ask you about your memories of your time in Singapore and in NUS. What were some of your greatest, fondest memories?
I still remember the time we were in Outram Park in Tiong Bahru area. So in coming to this campus today, I asked the driver, where are we? I said, where is Outram Park? He said, it's just in front of us. But I said, no, in my time, you don't have so many buildings. So, my fond memory, okay, let me tell you, the community, okay? We are a very close-knit team of people. I see David Koh here. I see, Chia Ki-sing here. They were both of them are my classmates, were classmates, right? So without their help, I can graduate. I can guarantee you. I can graduate.
I could help you with the statistics tutorials.
Well, we had a statistics professor at our time, a great person. The difficulty is with me. I don't understand statistics. So you cannot blame the professor. If, David Koh and Chia Ki-sing and others can graduate. So I have nobody to blame but myself, right? No. Well done. And I still, the fond memory is the time we went to Genting. It's one of our few trips. I still remember the moment when all four of us, right, David Koh? All four of us went to this bed. And to relax. Nothing obscene, okay? Don't worry. So I have to say, the NUS community and all these years, do you know that today, as I have to see your big gun, I was reflecting. After my graduation, I came back on an annual basis because of one of my loves is durian. Okay, but the school matters. And until the time I went to the Victoria, then I seldom visit Singapore. Singapore, as a country, small, but you are a voice of moderation. You know your science. You know what is good for your country. So keep it up, okay? Don't allow people to say that you're small. And no, don't forget, in WHO, one voice, one vote, everything counts.
So I just want to correct any misinterpretation or misperception that has been conveyed by Dr. Chan. Our School of Public Health, we still conduct field trips. They are very serious. They learn, they're educational. It is not about relaxing and fun. It is fun because we make it fun to relieve, to build mental well-being, but it is very educational. And it is not just about durians. Durians is optional. But Dr. Chan, you talk about Singapore's role and Singapore being small, but a voice, an important voice of moderation. What do you think, or what would you advise Singapore, or even this university as the national university for the country? What can we do and play in shaping global health?
Well, in health, be very active in WHO. That's the first thing. Let your voice heard.
Provost, I would submit a request for more travel budget to WHO. But Dr. Chan, back to you, please.
No, because it's correct. If your voice is not heard, then people would not know. You are not represented. So, of course, country make a lot of, well, when I say make your voice heard, I don't mean you grandstand, okay? Don't do grandstanding. Let your voice heard. So that people right, small countries like Singapore, 5 million people. 5 million people is a lot. Yeah, sorry. I'm not very good with my mic. So anyways, be active in WHO. So actually, there is a coalition of School of Public Health. It was initiated by two women, Margaret Chan and Michelle Williams from Harvard. The two of us rope other people in, YY, and then Geneva University and many universities in the region. They are all School of Public Health. So we need to maintain the voice. What are important issues of the world in global health? True or not? So join that organization, and that organization is next year. I said to YY, you have to be in the World Health Assembly. Are you going to invite him? You better. Because as a delegation, it's the country that is in the leadership. So talk to the Ministry of Health. So the person next to you is important. So WHO only recognize country delegation, but you can have big or small or whatever size. I just quote an example. Thailand, a country that I know quite well, has a big delegation, right? And my friends use WHO to teach global health. That is something for you to think about. Each and every student has to understand the countries of the world, isn't it?
So we started off with the theme of shaping future of global health. And when we started this moderation, I painted a rather pessimistic picture. But I would like to end off with a much more optimistic view, because you gave us 3 recommendations. And I will just very quickly summarize. You talk about youths, you talk about partnerships, and you talk about leadership. And I would be presumptuous here. I actually think that universities as a whole has a very important role in addressing all 3 elements that you talk about: youth, partnerships, and leaderships. Perhaps a final comment from you, Dr. Chan, around how you see the role of universities.
I did say that yesterday when I addressed the audience with my acceptance address. Of course, thanking NUS, I did say, don't forget, NUS is one of the finest universities in the world. You are an outstanding leader in education, research, and innovation. Try to search the meanings of those words. Think deep and use every possible platform. Professor, give you some homework, sorry.
With that, thank you very much, Dr. Chan, for taking your time, not just for this afternoon, for spending time with us in Singapore and educating many of us, my colleagues at the School of Public Health, my colleagues in the university, and also, I know you have been busy with the Ministry of Health Singapore as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Chan.
I want to thank my alma mater, Singapore University, the National Singapore University. Way to go!
Thank you, Dr. Chan and Prof. Teo. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this afternoon's session, which we hope has been an interesting and insightful one. A video recording of the event will be available on NUS Cast by the end of next week. Now, we would like to invite everyone for a light reception at the foyer. Thank you, and we wish you a pleasant weekend ahead.